Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome to episode 27 of Real Stories. I am back after the little holiday break. I hope everybody had, a nice holiday break and a nice New Year's Eve. And I hope everybody has, a prosperous and happy 2023. I'm feeling really good about the new year, and I'm happy to start it off by doing one of these episodes. So today we're going back to the Let's Not Meet stories, and without any further ado, let's get started. Many, many years ago, before kids, rescue animals, mortgage, and a husband, I was a travel writer in Europe. I did most of my trips alone. This story is about the first time I visited Prague. I'd never been to Prague, and the trip was a last-minute decision, so I had little time to prepare. My travel partner had dumped me in another country, and I was determined to make the best out of the trip by visiting a place I'd never been. Upon arrival at the train station, I visited the accommodation office and asked for a hostel not far from the center. In my early 20s, winging it was part of the fun. These days, I'm far less adventurous. The hostel they sent me to was a sprawling, crumbling, slate-gray Art Deco building on a nondescript street about a 10-minute walk to Stare Mesto. The inside was probably beautiful at one time, but by the time I checked in, it was full of shabby, mismatched furniture and cheap stained carpet. Most of the light fixtures were broken, leaving everything but the lobby dark and gloomy. It smelled of standing water and dust. I found my room, a double for $12 per night, and made note of the fact that I had a roommate. She wasn't there, but on her side of the room there was a suitcase, a dress folded neatly across the back of a plastic chair, a scattering of makeup containers on a beat-up desk, and a stack of German fashion magazines on the bed. As I had no plans or goals on this impromptu trip, I spent the afternoon exploring Old Town Square, the Jewish Quarter, and Wenceslas Square. I purchased some Czech crystal from my mom and painted eggs from a street vendor for myself. I also made reservations for a sunset dinner cruise for one. At around 6 p.m., I returned to my room to shower, change clothes, and unload my purchases. When I left my room about an hour later, there was no indication that my roommate had returned at any point during the day. After the cruise, I stopped at a tiny bar on Tanaska and had a glass of wine. I had heard horror stories about the dangers of Prague, but I felt no more trepidation than I did in any other large city. Sure, the cobblestone streets, fog rolling off the Vltava, backlit Gothic architecture, and winding alleys made me think of Jack the Ripper or Dracula, but in a good way. It was nearly midnight when I returned to my hostel, so I was surprised to find that my roommate still hadn't returned. That wasn't uncommon, though. Backpackers are a fickle lot. She could have gone on a short overnight trip, just left her stuff behind, hooked up with a guy or a girl, and was just holed up in their place, or hanging out at another hostel. So I was surprised, but not concerned. I took another shower before bed. However, I was surprised to find that things in the room had changed up in my return. Her bed was neatly turned down, the magazines had been moved to the nightstand, and the dress was gone. The strangest thing, though, was the addition of a pink silly nightgown spread across the bed. My bed. Maybe she thought she still had the room to herself? I didn't see how. My shopping bags, clothes, and toiletries were in plain view. I gently moved the nightgown over to her bed. I then settled in for the night and wrote in my journal. I assumed she was in the shower or somewhere nearby, so I expected her to return shortly. After about an hour, though, her side was still empty. I needed to use the restroom before I went to sleep, so I made one last trip down the hall. The building was unusually quiet. There weren't the regular sounds of chatty backpackers, the clinking of glasses, or music that would normally leak through the walls. There was nothing. It was hushed, like a church after the congregation has left. I found myself practically tiptoeing back. My room was near the end of the hall, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the corridor was darker than it was before. The few working lights were blinking as they struggled to stay lit, and it reminded me of a funhouse. A tightness began to fill my stomach, and I subconsciously quickened my steps. There wasn't a soul behind me, yet I kept glancing back over my shoulder, convinced I'd see someone gaining momentum on me. The only sound was the soft thud of my flip-flops as they struck my soles. I was flooded with relief as I flung open my door, but it didn't last long. Everything was exactly as I left it, except for the silky nightgown, which was now back on my bed. Sleep came in fits and starts. I left the lamp on for a while, still convinced my roommate would come back, but the shadows it cast made the room even spookier. It was too dark with the light off. I'd finally slipped into a deep sleep when I suddenly heard the door open. A man stood in the darkened doorway, the hall light behind him showing just enough for me to see his contorted face. "I didn't mean to," he sobbed. "You have to help me." Too confused and disoriented to be scared, I sat up, scrubbed my eyes, and reached for the lamp switch. But once the room was light, I saw that the door was closed. There was no man. I quickly bounded off the bed and went to the door. It was locked. Nobody could have entered without a key. And the hallway? Empty. I passed the rest of the night on, fully clothed, sitting up in bed with the light on. Though I had paid for 2 nights, at 7 a.m. I gathered all my stuff and went down to the reception desk to check out. "By the way," I said to the 20-something receptionist, "my roommate never returned. I'm a little concerned." She picked up the room key, looked at it hard, frowned, and then glanced at her computer. "What room were you in again?" When I repeated it to her, she looked back at her screen. "Ma'am, that room's been empty for 3 weeks, and it's been cleaned since. We only have 6 people in the whole building. The hostel has since been renovated and is now a luxury hotel." I realized that we didn't physically meet, but I thought it was relevant since I seemed to have met someone who entered and then left my room. Well, that was an interesting story. I know I said that we were getting back to the let's not meet stories, but the conclusion of that one kinda was a little ambiguous. I think it could possibly be paranormal, honestly. So we have a person who is our storyteller, and they're taking a trip to Prague, this kind of impromptu trip, kind of shabbily planned, and they're by themselves, which salute to them because I've been trying to do more stuff on my own, and it's still a lot. And I'm just talking about like going to like a concert or a comedy show or something. But to go to a foreign country by yourself on vacation, that takes guts, and I respect it because I would be overwhelmed. I don't know. It's too much. I need at least one other person there. But respect to them. So they're in Prague, and they're just exploring Prague, booking themselves a little restaurant and buying, knickknacks. Pretty standard one-person vacation. And they have a hostel that they're staying in. Very cheap, like $12 a night. What a deal. That's crazy. However, you get what you pay for, and the place is a little run down. Not a lot of the lights work. A little weird there. So they have a roommate that they find out, but they never see them. They just had things in the other part of the room on their side, on their bed. And throughout the entire time this person was there, they never saw the roommate. Now, she did leave, so it is possible for the roommate to have come back when she was gone, but she never saw them. And then when she got back, she was taking a shower, and she gets back to her room, and there's a nightgown that was placed on her bed. So that's weird because she hasn't seen the roommate, and why is this gown on her bed? She didn't put it there. So then she's trying to get to sleep, and she wakes up in the middle of the night and sees somebody at her door. And they are like, "I didn't mean to," he sobbed. "You have to help me." Like, that is so ambiguous, and she was too groggy to really be super aware enough to make a decision as to what that was. And I mean, I don't blame her. If I woke up in the night and saw that at some random hostel, I'd be freaking out because that is crazy. However, that also kind of sounds like a ghost because she says she goes over there, she checks the door is locked, so nobody's getting in without a key. And then she looks in the hallway and there's nobody. So is it possible that somebody, went in there and said this strange statement and then scampered off? Very possible. However, this sounds like a ghost to me personally because, I didn't mean to, you have to help me. Unless there's something really bad, like a scary movie type situation going on in this hostel, which there is a scary movie franchise called Hostel. So who knows? But, Yeah, I don't know. It was just very weird. And the fact that the door was locked was also strange because she seemed to get up pretty quickly. She said she bounded from her bed. So they don't really have a lot of time to, get away without her seeing them either at the door or in the hallway. So very creepy and very scary. I wouldn't even know what to do in that situation. Like, she goes and runs to the door. I don't know if I'd want to do that because I don't know what's going on. Like, I'd be inquisitive. I would be wondering in my head, but I don't know if I could go up there, not like unarmed. Like, that's crazy because you never know. And when somebody comes up to you, as we've talked about, you want to help other people if they're in distress, but you also want to assess the situation to make sure that it's like safe for you to go and try and help them before you commit to that. So if somebody just like scampers in and says, "Help me, I'm so sorry," blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't know what are they hiding from? Like, that's the big thing. Because if it's something that I can't take on, then I guess I could hide them, but it's just a tough predicament. But definitely a very, very freaky story. And this is why I do not travel alone, especially not to foreign countries, because weird stuff like this happens. There's some people who have had great experiences, but I'm honestly just too paranoid for that. I need my people around me. We'll be back with more terrifying stories right after this word from our sponsor, BetterHelp. The start of a new year can be very happy for some because it's filled with brand new beginnings and new experiences to be had, but it can also be overwhelming. If you're feeling overwhelmed, depressed, stressed, or anxious about the new year or just about life in general, today's sponsor, BetterHelp, is here to help you. BetterHelp offers licensed therapists who are trained to listen and to help you. You can talk to your therapist in an online environment at your convenience. They have a broad range of expertise in BetterHelp's network of 20,000 therapists that give you access to help that may not be available in your area. You just fill out a questionnaire to help assess your specific needs, and then you can get matched with a therapist in as little as 48 hours. You can then schedule video and phone sessions and also exchange unlimited messages with your therapist. You can also request a new therapist at no additional charge at any time. So join the 3 million plus people who have taken charge of their mental health with an experienced BetterHelp therapist. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/real stories. That's betterhelp.com/real stories. All one word. What better way to start off the new year than taking charge of your mental health? So do that today with BetterHelp. Now, let's get back to the stories. Hello, everyone. I wanted to share my scary encounter that occurred just yesterday on the bus. So for a bit of context, I am a college student. Without giving too many details, I am a woman on the smaller side of average female height. I currently do not have a car, so I use my bike, or walk, or use the bus to get around. My college has a transit service that allows you to scan in with a student boarding pass for free. Other non-students are allowed to ride the bus by paying upon entering or by purchasing a ticket beforehand. I frequently ride the bus for various reasons, grocery runs, or treating myself to some food. And yesterday, I had the idea of treating myself to a movie after all the exams I have been having lately. I am an avid horror fan, and I knew that Terrifier 2 was in theaters, so of course I wanted to see it immediately. One of my friends told me that they found it funny and really enjoyed it, which was more than enough reason to go see it. Side note, it was good and hilarious, but if gore's not your thing, I do not recommend it. Anyways, I was looking at the tickets the day before yesterday, and I was trying to decide which time slot I wanted to see the movie in. Looking back now, something in my gut told me to choose the earlier time, and I wish I had listened to it. Another detail that I want to add is that there are two bus sizes, a large one and a smaller one. The bus I rode during the incident was the smaller one. The stop where I got on the bus is at the beginning of the route. Unlike every other stop, the driver usually parks the bus here for 5 minutes and gets off to use the restroom or to have a quick break before continuing with the rest of the route. Upon entering the bus, I noticed only 2 other passengers. Another girl about my age and an older man. The girl was in the front of the bus on the right side and the man was in the second row on the left side. I sat on the right side, several rows back. I usually read something on my phone or listen to music on the bus, so I immediately got on my phone when I sat down. Everything was okay for a little bit until I looked up and noticed the man repeatedly staring at me and looking away before staring at me again. I was immediately apprehensive, but just brushed it off. He started speaking aloud out of nowhere, saying things like, "Beautiful baby," and "So damn fine," while staring at me. I was frozen out of fear and could only keep looking at my phone to try to ignore it. This continued until I worked up the courage to say, "Sir, would you please stop staring at me?" To which he claimed he was not staring and told me I was extremely beautiful. Unsure of what to say, I just stupidly thanked him and went back to my phone. He had his body slightly turned, but when I confronted him, he faced fully forward. The driver got back on and we started moving again, so everything was calm for a bit, though I was admittedly still shaken up. The calm did not last long, though. Obviously, this creep couldn't contain himself and just had to voice his opinions about me out loud. He stated similar things again, but also added some new phrases, such as, "Gonna make you my wife," and by far the worst one, "I'm gonna get you pregnant." I was shaking at this point and was unsure what to do. I desperately wanted to sit next to the other girl, but did not want to pass by him to get to her. We made it to 2 other stops before the girl got off and said sorry before leaving. My heart dropped to my stomach. The last thing I wanted was to be alone with this guy. Luckily, more people got on at this stop. A middle-aged couple and a guy similar to my age. In a panicked voice, I sort of shouted and asked the guy my age if he would sit with me. He was a bit confused but came to sit by me and I immediately felt relief. The stress of the situation got to me and I broke down crying. I guess the creep took this as an indication to leave because he swiftly made his exit after that. The kind younger guy sat next to me and began to comfort me. I am so grateful he chose to ride the bus that day. The bus driver noticed the commotion and called me to the front to get information in order to make a report. He told me he couldn't hear anything but that buses have videos and hopefully it would pick up what the creep was saying. He told me that the same man had recently been kicked off for a similar incident and that he would be reporting this immediately. For the rest of the ride, the younger guy and I talked about stuff like our majors and other school-related things. I wanted to go into marine biology field and he is a graduate student in mechanical engineering. I made it to the movies and back home safely, but I definitely learned a lesson. My boyfriend is going to help me look into some self-defense items and he taught me a few fighting tactics. I am still shaken as I am writing this, but I am actually really afraid to leave my room now. Sometimes it's easy to forget that creepy encounters with weirdos can happen at any time. They aren't just stories on the internet. Ooh, yikes. Valid point though, they definitely are not just stories on the internet. Creepy encounters can happen anywhere, at any time. So it is good to be aware of that because it is better than pretending that it doesn't happen. However, this story is weird and it hits close to home because I used to take the bus when I was going to college, and buses are a very interesting place. It reminds me of a joke that Kevin Hart had one time, and he's like, "You want to toughen a kid up? Throw him on a bus with the most random group of people he's ever seen before." That is so funny, and it's so accurate because you never know. Everybody can get on a bus for the most part, unless they've already been banned, or I don't know what other things can happen. I'm pretty sure anybody could just get on a bus. So there's a lot of people who could be driving who aren't. So then you narrow that pool down. So then it's like, okay, there's a lot of students on this bus, and I could relate to that because when I took the bus to college, we had a particular line that went to Cleveland State. So I would always take that bus. And that bus was actually better. If I got off and I took like the city one, which would technically get me closer to my destination, but would have weirder people on it and be slightly slower. So there's always, things with getting on the bus. But I also took the bus as a kid because my elementary school was on the complete other side of the city, because we went to that one so my sister could go to her advanced classes. And, my parents wanted us at the same school, and they were the only one that had the advanced classes at the time. So, end result, me taking the bus home at like 4th grade on, or 4th and 5th maybe. And my sister was with me a couple of the times, but a couple of the times she wasn't. So I'm well aware of the feeling of being overwhelmed on a bus and dealing with weird people. So this story definitely hits. We have our protagonist, and they're on their way to see Terrifier 2, which, good for them. I really want to see that. The first Terrifier is crazy, but they were not joking when they're like, if gore's not your stuff, then, not your vibe. Don't watch it. Because it is a very gory movie, and it's pretty intense, but I really like the first one, and I definitely need to see the second one. But that's beside the point. So, we have our writer, we have a protagonist, and they are on the bus going to see a movie, and they pick a later time. And that's another thing about the buses is during the day, there's a lot of people who just need to go to work or need to get groceries, whatever, but the bus is more populated. So you don't really think much about things that happen because, there's a lot of witnesses, and a lot of things just don't happen like that in public that early in the day. However, at night, anything can happen on the bus, most things won't happen because they do have cameras, but a bunch of stuff has happened on buses. People have gotten into fights and then gotten out and somebody hurt the other person or they killed them. People have been harassed. That happens, I'm sure, a lot, as indicated by this story. And so, buses they're a weird vibe, to say the least. So this person is getting on the bus, and they're a younger girl. They're a college student. So they're a younger girl getting on the bus. I don't even like it when I was a younger dude getting on the bus. So I can only imagine how the girls feel. But luckily, there's another girl on the bus, so she feels a little bit safer. However, there's a guy who then is harassing her by making all these weird comments about, just kind of harassing her, being like, oh, you're so beautiful. Oh, I'm going to marry you. So fine. And he is just doing this. Nobody's really hearing it because, the bus is kind of loud, so the driver can't really hear it. I'm sure the other girl probably heard it. And at one point, he even says, I'm going to get you pregnant, which is aggressive to say the least. As far as hitting on somebody you don't know, wouldn't recommend it. I don't think that a lot of the girls are going to be like, oh, yeah, for sure. Sounds like a plan, to a random. No. So, anyways, another person gets on the bus, and it's a dude who looks like he's also around the age of a college student. And she just beckons him over to sit next to him, just to have, a safe person in between her and this dude. So he comes over, he picks up on the clues, so shout out to him. He's definitely our winner of the week for this week. You gotta know the vibe when you're helping somebody. You gotta keep an eye open for strangers, because some people, you gotta be cautious of, but other people, you have to be like, okay, why is that person running away frantically? Why is this person look scared? Do people look uncomfortable visibly? Because sometimes somebody like that might really need your help. There was a great story one time where this girl, maybe she was kidnapped or she was with somebody and she was very uncomfortable, needed to get away from the situation. And at one point she makes eye contact with a cashier, and they read each other's eyes. They're trying to elicit yo, come help me. I'm in a bad predicament. And the cashier realizes that. And so she pulls her to the side and is like, oh, your card didn't go through or something really good, really discreet. And when she pulls her away to talk to her, she's like, hey, are you okay? Is this man bothering you? Are you in danger? Whatever. And she's able to get away. And, the guy like ran off because then he got scared that, she was getting help. So you really got to look out. We got to look out for each other because, High School Musical, we're all in this together. We're all just trying to get by for the most part. So you got to look out for each other and help people when they look like they're in distress, or just call out stuff. I know it's not the easiest thing to do to get involved in a situation, but if somebody's getting harassed like that on the bus, it's like, I feel like, I'm not going to toot my own horn. I'm not like the most, brave person ever, but I'm saying something. Because, it's cringy, it's creepy, and it's scary to watch. So, it's just not acceptable behavior. But I'm glad that the girl made it home safe. She made it to the movie safe. She enjoyed the movie. And, there's a lot of good takeaways from this story. But, yeah, buses are always a strange vibe. This story occurred a few years back while I was staying at my grandmother's house during vacation. They live near the Atlantic Wall. For those of you who don't know, that is a system of concrete blockhouses built by Nazi Germany during World War II. At that time, I was 16 and I was fascinated with urbex, so I thought it would be a great idea to go explore those. When I arrived on the beach, I started exploring and everything went well since this place is actually public and a lot of people come here like you would do on any normal beach. Time passed by and there was nothing really interesting to see, so I made the decision to go deep into the dunes to find other structures. I found some, but they were all but buried in the sand or covered with vegetation. That is, until I found the one. I was super excited, and when I arrived, I started to barge in like I did before. But suddenly, a gut feeling stopped me at one of those entrances. I kept quiet and listened. There was a sort of indistinct chatter/moaning. Honestly, I don't know what kept me around after that. For some stupid reason, I chose the option of yelling, "Hello? Is anyone there?" multiple times. The sounds coming from inside stopped, and the atmosphere was getting quite tense, so I made my way to the roof. It was a single ramp, no exit. Stupid decision again, but curiosity was too strong. A few minutes later, a middle-aged man comes out and started the weirdest discussion with me. He asked me if I was alone and what was my age. I was obviously a minor at the time. He then proceeded to tell me what they were doing inside was perfectly right and I, quote, shouldn't call the police, without waiting for my answers. At the end of his little speech, he asked me if I wanted to go inside. Obviously, I refused. Thank God he didn't insist and he went back in. As I walked away, I passed by one of the other entrances that happened to provide a direct view inside. I took a peek and I instantly ran the heck out of there. What I briefly saw was another old man, naked, pleasuring himself, looking at me. In the background, I saw many other figures and a candle on the ground. I heard some sort of chanting too. After I put enough distance, I took my phone out and called the police. What I basically told them was too surreal for them to believe me, and I was basically laughed at and given a lecture about prank calls. No one believes me other than my dad. He had a weird encounter in these dunes as well. But in the end, I don't care. Let's not meet again people having I don't know what kind of stuff going on in a bunker trying to lure minors in. Oh, and I quit Urbex. Ooh, that was a little weird, freaky story. So also, Urbex is urban exploration, for some of you who did not know that, because I didn't know that, so I just wanted to clarify. So we have our person who's writing our story, and they were an urban explorer at the time, which basically means that they like to, go to different spots, go through different roofs and tunnels, and just explore things that are probably historically built or, old, and just to see what's inside. And here's the thing about exploring places that you shouldn't probably be in, is that occasionally you will stumble across something very weird. And this person did just that. So they're in a bunker that was used during WW2 and built by like Germans. So they're in a weird Nazi bunker, and they kind of stumble across some weird little sex cult that is, I guess, going on. So, that's I know people say you're not supposed to kink shame, but like in the Nazi bunkers, that's where we need to be doing that? I don't think so. So that's pretty weird. So she's going through the caves. A middle-aged man comes out, is like asking her, if she was alone and what her age was. And she's like obviously weirded out by the situation because she's minor at the time. So why are you asking me very creepy questions? Red flags are up. So she, gets away from him, refuses to hang out, and leaves. But as she's leaving, she goes by and sees like an entrance into where that man was trying to lead her, and sees another man straight up pleasuring himself looking at her. And there's candles on the ground. So it was some weird, freaky stuff going on in there that, she's obviously too young for. But also, like, what was that? Like, why are we having the sex cult in the Nazi bunkers? That's a very strange choice. So that really, obviously, stood out. It's not, one of our typical let's not meet stories, but it definitely fits because I would not want to meet them again. That is, no, there's just, it's so random. Like, it's not what you would expect to go in there. Like, I would expect, and I know it's morbid, but like be less surprised if you found like a body in there or like bones or something. Like that would be a little more on brand because, people haven't been exploring those in a professional sense in a long time. And, it would have made more sense for her to see like a ghost or, just find, I don't know, some weird old paraphernalia or something. But to find a little sex cult or it was, not our conventional story, but it does fit. And it was definitely very interesting. But yeah, this is why there's a theme of like things that are kind of sketchy to do on your own. One would be traveling to foreign countries and doing it kind of last minute, not planning much. And two would be urbex or just urban exploring because you're going into all these tunnels that, are probably closed off for a reason. I'm sure that they're not the safest to be in under normal circumstances, but the fact that people are not supposed to be down there also, if you're, think about it, would be a good hiding place for people who are like not trying to be seen or found by other members of society. So it's not too surprising that there's some weirdos hanging out in some underground tunnels, but it was just very unexpected because when you think of that, you think like, oh, maybe they're just like, a serial killer or something. But this was like just some freaky stuff. So I don't know, but very interesting story, that's for sure.